Red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Titan's hammer as systems that had been dormant for centuries hummed back to life. Admiral Tom Walker rubbed his eyes, the last effects of cryo-sleep still clinging to him like cobwebs. His uniform felt tight after so many years frozen in time. "Status report," he ordered, his voice rough from centuries of disuse. Lieutenant Jane Reed tapped on her console, her fingers clumsy as they remembered how to work. "Sir, all major systems are online. The fleet is reporting in. We have 17 warships responding." Walker nodded slowly. "And the SOS signal?" "Gone, sir. It stopped broadcasting 3 weeks ago." The bridge fell silent. 3 weeks in space meant many things could have happened to whoever sent that desperate call for help. "The signal came from the Velari colonies in the Orion Arm," Reed continued. "Our records show they were a peaceful trading species, not warriors." Walker stood up and walked to the main view screen. The stars looked the same, but he knew everything else had changed. The mighty human empire he had sworn to protect was likely gone. 300 years in cryo-sleep had been the only way to save what remained of humanity from the plague. "How many crew members have we awakened?" he asked. 600 across the fleet, sir. Minimum operational capacity, as per emergency protocols." Technical Officer Ben White approached with a tablet. "Admiral, I've run diagnostics on our weapon systems. They're operational, but some of the targeting systems need calibration." Walker took the tablet and scrolled through the report. "Do we have any contact with human colonies? Earth Command." White and Reed exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Sir," Reed said carefully, "we've been sending signals on all standard frequencies. No human colonies are responding with recognition codes." Walker's face remained stone-like, but his fingers tightened around the tablet. "Keep trying." "There's something else," White added. "We're picking up transmissions in over 50 languages. Most of them we can't translate yet, but the ones we can, they're talking about the Krell Dominion, the same name mentioned in the SOS. Walker returned to his command chair. "Show me what we know about these Krell." The main screen flickered to life, showing grainy images captured from distant transmissions. Insect-like beings with 4 arms and protective exoskeletons, ships shaped like arrowheads, cutting through space with brutal efficiency. "From what we can piece together," Reed explained, "they've conquered 12 systems since the distress call was sent. The Velari homeworld was the first to fall." Walker's jaw tightened. Any information on their capabilities? Reed hesitated before bringing up another file. "This is disturbing, sir. Our xenobiologists studied the transmissions. The Krell appear to consume other sentient species. It's part of their life cycle. They're not just conquerors. They're predators." The bridge crew shifted uncomfortably. "And what about us? What do these transmissions say about humans?" Walker asked the question everyone was thinking. White stepped forward. "That's the strangest part, sir. Most current species seem to think humans are extinct. Some don't believe we ever existed. A few mention war giants in what sound like myths or children's stories." Walker stood again, his back straight, his resolve hardening. "Power up the engines. Set course for the nearest Velari colony that's still broadcasting any kind of signal. If there are survivors, we'll find them." As the massive engines of the human warships roared to life for the first time in centuries, alien tracking stations across 3 sectors registered the sudden appearance of vessels unlike anything in their records. Ships of impossible size and power, moving with purpose toward the front lines of a war they hadn't known was happening. The human war giants had awakened, and the galaxy was about to remember why that was terrifying. And debris floated around it in a sad cloud. As the Titan's hammer approached, smaller ships fled from the station in panic. "They're running from us," Lieutenant Reed said, watching the evacuation unfold on the main screen. Admiral Walker frowned. "Open a channel. All frequencies, all languages our system can translate." Reed nodded and pressed a series of buttons. "Channel open, sir." Walker stood tall, straightening his uniform. "This is Admiral Tom Walker of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress call and have come to offer assistance. We mean you no harm." For several minutes, there was no response. Then a shaky voice came through the speakers. This cannot be real. Humans are gone. They are only stories." Walker exchanged glances with his crew. "I assure you, we are very real. We've been in cryo-sleep for centuries. Your SOS signal woke us." The communication screen flickered to life, showing a thin, blue-skinned being with large eyes that blinked rapidly in disbelief. "I am Lore, ambassador of what remains of the Velari Cooperative. Are you truly the War Giants?" "War Giants," Walker repeated. "We call ourselves humans. We once had an alliance with your people, long ago." Lore's hands trembled visibly. "The old stories speak of giant warriors who walked among the stars. They say your smallest ships could destroy moons, and your largest could move planets." Technical Officer White suppressed a smile. The stories had grown in the telling. "We would like to dock and speak with your leaders," Walker said. "We need to understand what's happening with these Krell invaders." Lore hesitated. "Most of our leaders are dead. The Krell attacked without warning. We are refugees now." "All the more reason to talk," Walker pressed. After receiving permission to dock, Walker selected a small team including Reed and the fleet's intelligence officer, Mark Davis. They boarded the station through an airlock that seemed impossibly small to them. The Velari were much shorter than humans, and the away team had to duck through doorways. Inside, dozens of Velari crowded to see them. Children pointed and whispered. Some adults bowed deeply. "They think we're gods," Reed whispered to Walker. "That stops now," he whispered back firmly. Lore led them to a meeting room, where 5 other Velari waited nervously. As the humans entered, one elderly Velari fell to his knees. "Please stand," Walker said gently. "We are not gods. We are simply soldiers who slept too long." Over the next hour, the humans learned how the galaxy had changed. The Velari explained that humans had faded into legend after suddenly disappearing centuries ago. Some believed they had ascended to another plane of existence. Others thought they had destroyed themselves in a civil war. "We entered cryo-sleep when a plague threatened to wipe us out," Walker explained. "It was meant to be temporary, until a cure was found. Something must have gone wrong with the automated systems that were supposed to wake us." As they spoke, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. A Velari technician burst into the room. "Krell scouts. 3 ships approaching fast." The humans rushed to a viewing port. 3 arrow-shaped vessels were closing in on the station. "Get back to our ship," Walker ordered his team. "We'll handle this." "But you're only one ship," Lore protested. "The Krell will." Walker's expression hardened. "Watch." Back aboard the Titan's hammer, Walker gave a simple command. "Target the Krell scouts." Minimal force. A single destroyer-class ship from the human fleet moved into position. It fired 3 shots that looked like small stars streaking through space. The Krell ships exploded instantly, leaving nothing but dust. On the station, the Velari watched in stunned silence. Then cheers erupted as hope returned to a people who had known only defeat. Lore turned to his council members with tears in his eyes. "The war giants have returned. We might survive after all." The war room aboard the Titan's hammer buzzed with activity as senior officers gathered around a large holographic display. The 3-dimensional map showed dozens of star systems, with red markers indicating Krell-controlled territories. There were far too many red markers. Admiral Walker studied the map with a grim expression. "They've been busy while we slept." Lieutenant Reed stepped forward with a data tablet. "Sir, I've analyzed the information from the Velari databases. The Krell have a hive-like social structure with a central queen who makes all major decisions. A single point of failure," Walker noted. "That could be useful." "There's more," Reed continued. "Their biology is unlike anything we've encountered before. They have no concept of surrender or peaceful coexistence. Their language doesn't even have words for these concepts. Technical Officer White joined them, looking excited despite the grim news. Admiral, I've completed the weapons assessment. Our technology is still centuries ahead of anything currently in use. Even our oldest defensive systems can withstand their most advanced weapons. Walker nodded. And our offensive capabilities. White lowered his voice, though everyone in the room had clearance to hear. The Nova Cascades are still operational. One would be enough to eliminate their entire home system. The room fell silent. Nova Cascades were planet killers, weapons of last resort. They were the reason humans had been both respected and feared. Commander John Hayes, the fleet's tactical officer, shook his head. Sir, with respect, deploying a Nova Cascade should be our last option. The political fallout would be significant. Agreed, Walker said firmly. We're not starting our return to the galactic stage by destroying entire worlds. Mark Davis, the intelligence officer who had interviewed the Villari, projected new images onto the display. The Villari gave us star charts showing what they believe were human colony worlds. Many still exist, though it's unclear how many maintain human populations. Walker examined the colony locations thoughtfully. We need to know what happened to our people, and we need allies if we're going to push back the Krell effectively. The Krell will respond to our destruction of their scouts, Hayes warned. They'll send more ships, bigger ones. Let them come, Walker said, but we won't just sit and wait. We need a two-pronged approach. First, we strike at their command structure, not to destroy, but to disrupt. Second, we make contact with our old colonies. He pointed to 2 points on the map. Captain Lisa Grant, I want you to take the Aurora to Arcturus Prime. Our records show it was our most populous colony. Find out what's left of humanity there. A tall woman with short gray hair nodded. Yes, sir. Commander Hayes, you'll take the Dauntless to New Earth. See what remains of our second largest settlement. Walker looked around the room at the faces of people who, just weeks ago by their perception, had been defenders of a mighty human empire. Now they were legends awakened in a time not their own. We left this galaxy once because we had no choice. The plague would have killed us all. But now we have a second chance to fulfill our original mission, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Lieutenant Reed looked troubled. What if the colonies don't want our protection? What if they've forgotten who we are, what we stand for? Walker considered this. Then we remind them. Not by forcing our way in, but by standing against the darkness that threatens us all. The meeting concluded, and officers dispersed to prepare their ships. As Walker studied the star map alone, he felt the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on him. Everything they had known was gone. Everyone they had protected had either perished or forgotten them. But the stars remained, and somewhere out there, descendants of humanity might still exist, living in ignorance of their heritage, unaware that the legendary war giants had awakened. Their ancient guardians returned just when the galaxy needed them most. Awakening the colonies, Captain Lisa Grant stood on a grassy hill overlooking a settlement that, according to ancient maps, should have been the capital city of Arcturus Prime. Instead of the gleaming metropolis their records showed, she saw a collection of wooden and stone buildings. Horse-drawn carts moved along dirt roads. No sign of advanced technology was visible. Are we sure this is the right place? Asked her second-in-command, Officer Paul Miller. Grant checked her scanner again. The coordinates matched perfectly. This was once home to 15 million humans, with technology matching Earth's. They had left their shuttle hidden in the forest and dressed in simple clothes to blend in. As they approached the village, curious eyes followed them. The people looked human, but something was different. They were shorter, with slightly larger eyes. Adaptations to the planet's gravity and light conditions over many generations. A man approached them, carrying a staff. Strangers, what brings you to Westwood? Grant had prepared for this. We are travelers from beyond the mountains. We seek knowledge of the old ways. The man, who introduced himself as Elder James, welcomed them cautiously. Few travel between settlements these days. The night beasts make the journey dangerous. As they walked through the village, Grant noticed something strange. On many buildings were carved symbols that looked like simplified versions of old Earth military insignias. The villagers wore pendants shaped like stars, remarkably similar to ancient fleet command badges. Elder James invited them to share a meal. Inside his home, Grant spotted something that made her heart race, a faded picture frame containing what appeared to be a printed photograph of a spacecraft. "That is a sky chariot of the ancestors," James explained when he noticed her interest. "From the time before." "The time before?" Miller asked casually. James nodded solemnly. "When our ancestors traveled among the stars, before the great sleep came upon them. Only the strongest survived, those who could adapt to life without the magic tools." Grant and Miller exchanged glances. This community had descended from the colonial settlers, but they had lost all their technology. "There are stories," James continued, lowering his voice, "that the ancestors built great shelters beneath the ground, filled with treasures and powerful magic. But those are just tales to entertain children." Later that night, away from curious ears, Grant used her communicator. "Admiral Walker, we found descendants of the colonists, but they've regressed to a pre-industrial society. They have no knowledge of space travel or their true history." Miles away on another continent, Commander Hayes faced a completely different situation. The humans he found lived in a sprawling city alongside 3 alien species. Advanced technology was everywhere, but it wasn't human in design. "We've integrated fully with the local species," explained Dr. Anna Thompson, a woman who claimed to be the historical record keeper. "Our ancestors were colonists, yes, but we haven't considered ourselves separate from the planetary population for over 10 generations." Hayes looked out over the city where hovercars zoomed between buildings. "And do you remember Earth, the human homeworld?" Dr. Thompson smiled sadly. "As a historical curiosity, yes. Most believe it was destroyed long ago." Back on the Titan's hammer, Admiral Walker received both reports with mixed emotions. "So on one world, our people have forgotten technology entirely," he summarized. "And on another, they've merged so completely with alien cultures that they've lost their identity as humans." Lieutenant Reed added another concern. "Sir, we're detecting unusual communication patterns from Krell territory. They've noticed our ships. They're mobilizing." Walker stood at the view screen, watching as hundreds of red dots began moving across the star map. The Krell were coming. In the command center beneath Elder James's village, automatic systems that had lain dormant for centuries suddenly activated. Deep underground, ancient defense batteries began their startup sequences as they detected approaching threats. The war giants weren't the only things awakening from their long slumber. The first wave of Krell ships appeared at the edge of the system like a storm front. Hundreds of arrow-shaped vessels moved in perfect formation, their black hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. On the bridge of the Titan's hammer, Admiral Walker watched them approach on the main view screen. "They've committed nearly a third of their fleet," Lieutenant Reed reported. "Our scouts count over 400 warships." Walker nodded calmly. "They think numbers will overwhelm us. Deploy defensive formation Delta. Power all shields to maximum." The 17 human warships moved into position, looking impossibly small against the oncoming Krell armée. But appearances were deceiving. Each human vessel carried weapons that could destroy moons. "Sir," Technical Officer White called out, "some of our main systems are showing power fluctuations. The weapon targeting computers are struggling after centuries of disuse." Walker frowned. "Manual targeting protocols then, just like we trained." The Krell struck first. Hundreds of energy beams crossed space, hammering against the human shields. The Titan's hammer shook violently. "Shields holding at 82%, White reported. "But the power drain is higher than our simulations predicted." Walker stood from his command chair. "Return fire. All ships, focus on their lead vessels." Human weapons lashed out, cutting through the front line of Krell ships like they were made of paper. But the Krell kept coming, sacrificing ships to test the humans' capabilities. "Sir," Reed shouted over the noise of another impact, "I've been analyzing their communication patterns. The Krell use some kind of biological radiation to coordinate their attacks." Walker moved to her station. "Can we disrupt it?" "Better," Reed said with a grim smile. "My analysis suggests their central nervous systems are highly sensitive to pulse radiation at this specific frequency." She showed him the data on her screen. Before Walker could respond, a massive blast rocked the ship. Sparks flew from a console as crew members were thrown to the floor. "Direct hit," White shouted. "Main weapon systems are offline." Across the fleet, 3 of the ancient human warships had taken critical damage. Their centuries-old systems, powerful as they were, hadn't been maintained properly during their long sleep. "Manual override," White said, already moving toward an access panel. "I can bypass the damaged circuits, but I'll have to do it by hand." Walker helped the officer open the panel. "Do it. We'll buy you time." The Admiral returned to his chair. "Deploy the drones." "All of them." Outside, bay doors opened on the human ships. Thousands of small, unmanned fighters poured out, each no bigger than a shuttle, but armed with weapons that could pierce Krell shields. The drones moved in complex patterns, too fast and unpredictable for the Krell targeting systems to lock on. They swarmed the larger enemy vessels like angry bees, finding weak points and exploiting them. "It's working," Reed called out. "They can't track the drones." White emerged from the access panel, his face streaked with sweat and grease. "Weapon systems back online, sir, but I don't know how long the patch will hold." Walker didn't hesitate. "Target their command ships with the pulse radiation Lieutenant Reed identified. Full spread." The human fleet fired as one. No explosions, no dramatic light show, just invisible waves of radiation that passed harmlessly through human ships but hit the Krell vessels with devastating effect. On the Krell ships, the insect-like creatures suddenly lost coordination. Their movements became erratic. Ships began to drift or crash into each other. "It's working," Reed said in wonder. "The radiation is disrupting their nervous systems. They can't function." The battle turned quickly. Within an hour, the remaining Krell ships were retreating, leaving hundreds of disabled vessels drifting in space. Victory had been achieved, but at a cost. 3 human warships were damaged beyond repair. As Walker looked at the casualty reports, he realized a hard truth. They couldn't win through attrition. There were simply too many Krell and too few humans. They needed a more permanent solution. And soon, before the Krell returned with an even larger force. Admiral Walker stood alone in the weapons vault of the Titan's hammer, staring at a device no bigger than his palm. The Nova Cascade. A weapon so powerful it could trigger a chain reaction in a star, causing it to collapse. One device could destroy an entire solar system. The door hissed open behind him. Lieutenant Reed entered, her face showing concern. "Admiral, the Krell have regrouped. Our scouts report they're gathering a force 3 times larger than before." Walker closed his hand around the device. "We can't fight them ship to ship forever, Jane. We don't have the numbers." Reed nodded toward his closed fist. "Is that why you're down here?" "Considering the unthinkable." Walker placed the device back in its secure container. "I was. But using this would make us no better than the Krell." They walked together to the bridge, where a new report awaited them. Captain Grant had returned from Arcturus Prime with surprising news. The underground facility activated itself, Grant explained, pointing to sensor readings. Ancient defense systems buried beneath the main settlement came online when the Krell approached the system. They appear to be part of a galaxy-wide network we built before going into cryosleep. Walker leaned forward. "A network? Show me." Grant displayed a map showing dozens of red dots across the galaxy. Each point represents a defense installation that's still operational. Most are on former human worlds. The colonists don't even know they exist. Hope flickered in Walker's eyes. "Can we control them remotely?" "We're working on it," Grant confirmed. Commander Hayes entered the bridge with guests, representatives from the mixed human-alien society he had discovered. "Admiral, these people want to help," Hayes said. "They may not identify solely as humans anymore, but they recognize the Krell threat." A tall woman with subtle ridges on her forehead stepped forward. "I am Council Member Terra. My great-grandmother was fully human. When Commander Hayes told us about the Krell, we knew we had to act. They'd been probing our borders for years." Walker welcomed them, but his mind was already racing with possibilities. If they could activate the ancient defense network, they might have a chance without using the Nova Cascade. Lieutenant Reed interrupted with urgent news. "Sir, we've completed our analysis of the Krell biology. They're not inherently evil. Their aggression and need to consume other species is driven by their biology. They literally cannot control it." This revelation struck Walker hard. Destroying a species because of their nature rather than their choices felt wrong, but letting them continue their rampage would doom countless innocent lives. "There's more," Reed added. "Some human colonies have actually formed alliances with the Krell, unaware that they're simply being farmed. The Krell keep them safe from other threats while preparing them as future food sources." The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this horrific information. Technical Officer White cleared his throat. "Sir, I think I have a solution. Based on what we learned about their sensitivity to certain radiation, we could modify the Nova Cascade. Instead of destroying stars, we could create a radiation wave that targets only Krell biology. It would paralyze them without killing them or harming other species." Walker considered this option. "How long would the effect last?" "Permanently," White answered. "It would alter their brain chemistry. They would lose the aggressive drive that makes them consume others. They could still live, but not as predators." "You're talking about changing their fundamental nature," Reed said softly. "Do we have that right?" Walker looked around at his crew, at the representatives of humanity's fractured legacy. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. Use a modified weapon that would forever alter an entire species, or watch as that species devoured world after world. "Prepare the modified Nova Cascade," he finally ordered. "But I want to speak with a Krell first. If we're going to change them forever, we should at least try to understand them." The modified Nova Cascade devices floated silently in space, each no larger than a human hand. Admiral Walker had deployed them at strategic points throughout Krell territory, after his attempt to communicate with a captured Krell commander had failed. The insect-like being had only tried to attack him, driven by instincts it couldn't control. "All devices are in position," Technical Officer White reported. "Awaiting your command, sir." The bridge of the Titan's hammer was unusually quiet. Everyone understood the gravity of the moment. They were about to change an entire species forever. Walker took a deep breath. "Activate the devices." White pressed a sequence of commands. On the main view screen, tiny points of light began to pulse as the devices activated. They emitted waves of radiation that spread outward, harmless to most life forms, but precisely calibrated to affect Krell neurochemistry. Radiation wave expanding at predicted rate. Lieutenant Reed confirmed. "It will reach all Krell-controlled systems within 6 hours." The effect was almost immediate. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Krell ships stopped in mid-attack. Invasion forces withdrew from planets they had been assaulting. The coordinated Krell war machines simply paused. "It's working," Walker said quietly, watching the data stream in. "They're no longer aggressive." Captain Grant approached with a communication tablet. "Sir, we're receiving messages from dozens of worlds. They're watching the Krell retreat and want to know what happened. Many are specifically asking about the war giants." "Tell them the truth," Walker decided. "The humans have returned, and we've neutralized the Krell threat." In the days that followed, representatives from countless worlds requested meetings with the legendary war giants. Some came seeking protection, others offering alliance, and many simply curious about the species they had thought extinct. The most moving reunion came when Walker visited one of the hidden defense installations on a former colony world. As the facility awakened fully, it revealed something unexpected. A cryo-sleep chamber containing scientists and military personnel who had been left behind to monitor the sleeping fleet. "We were supposed to wake you after 50 years, explained Dr. James Moore, the lead scientist. But the plague mutated. It affected our systems. We had to put ourselves in stasis too, hoping the automated systems would eventually work." 300 years late, Walker said with a sad smile. "But here we are." A week later, Admiral Walker called a meeting aboard the Titan's Hammer. Representatives from former human colonies, the Velari, and a dozen other species gathered in the main conference room. "For centuries, humanity slept while the galaxy changed around us," Walker began. "We awoke to find our empire gone, our colonies scattered or transformed. But we also found a galaxy in need of protection." He activated a hologram showing the modified Krell. They now move slowly, peacefully, their murderous instincts neutralized by the radiation. "The Krell will no longer threaten anyone," Walker continued. "They've been changed, not destroyed. Some might question our right to alter another species, but we chose the path that saved the most lives, including theirs." Lieutenant Reed stepped forward. "We've discovered something concerning. Our scientists believe the plague that forced humans into cryo-sleep centuries ago wasn't natural. It appears to have been engineered specifically to target human biology." A murmur went through the crowd. "Someone wanted humanity gone," Walker said firmly. "And while we investigate who that might have been, we propose a new galactic defense pact, with humans serving not as conquerors, but as protectors." The vote was unanimous. The pact was formed. Humanity would not return to its empire-building past, but would instead use its advanced technology to defend those who could not defend themselves. As the representatives departed, Walker stood alone at the viewscreen, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was the answer to who had targeted humanity all those centuries ago. And whatever threat they might pose, the war giants were awake now, and they would not sleep again. The abandoned space station drifted silently through the void, its systems barely functioning after centuries of neglect. In its communication center, a small red light began to blink. Power reserves, carefully preserved through the ages, channeled into the emergency beacon. The ancient machine stirred to life, sending out a signal across the stars. A simple message repeated over and over: "Help us." The signal traveled for weeks before reaching human space. When it finally arrived at Earth's outer colonies, automated systems logged and analyzed it. The transmission contained an unusual signature, one that hadn't been seen in over 300 years. Deep in the military archives on Mars, a forgotten protocol activated. Under the red sands of Mars, in a complex buried 2 kilometers beneath the surface, lights flickered on for the first time in centuries. The facility had been sealed at the end of the last war, when humanity decided some weapons were too dangerous to keep at hand. Inside massive chambers, 12 stasis pods hummed as revival sequences initiated. Captain James Walker was the first to wake. His massive body, nearly 3 meters tall with shoulders twice as broad as a normal human's, convulsed as his enhanced systems restarted. He gasped, drawing air into lungs that hadn't breathed in 300 years. His eyes, designed to see in almost complete darkness, adjusted quickly to the dim emergency lighting. "Status report," he croaked, his voice rough from disuse. The facility's AI responded promptly. "Emergency protocol Delta 9 activated. Distress signal matching designated parameters received. Revival of War Giant Battalion 6 Alpha in progress." Walker pulled himself from the pod, his enhanced muscles trembling as they remembered how to move. He stood unsteadily, towering in the chamber. The other pods were opening now, revealing his team, 11 other giants like himself, each one a masterpiece of genetic engineering and cybernetic enhancement. "How long?" he asked. 327 standard years since shutdown," the AI replied. Walker closed his eyes. The war was long over then. The threat they had been created to fight had been defeated without them, and yet something had triggered their revival protocol, a specific emergency signature that only certain authorities would know to use. Commander Lisa Reeves emerged from her pod, her 7-foot frame still imposing despite her disorientation. "Captain," she said, her sharp eyes taking in the situation quickly. "The revival protocol." "Someone sent a signal," Walker confirmed. "Someone who knew how to wake us." The remaining giants were rising now. Major Thomas Reed, Lieutenant Anna Maxwell, Sergeant Daniel Foster, and the others. Each one represented the pinnacle of military science from a previous age. Stronger, faster, and more durable than any normal human could be. Their minds were enhanced too, capable of processing tactical information at incredible speeds. They had been the ultimate solution to an existential threat, and when the threat passed, humanity had decided to put them to sleep rather than destroy them, a compromise between those who feared them and those who argued they might be needed again. Walker moved to the command console and activated the briefing screen. The distress signal replayed, its origin point highlighted on a star map. The location was unfamiliar to him. Humanity must have expanded its reach while they slept. The signal originated from Colony D-17. The AI explained. "Current status of the colony is unknown. Last communication indicates possible hostile contact with unknown entities. Prep the revival ship," Walker ordered. "Full combat loadout." As his team began to move with increasing confidence, checking equipment and running system diagnostics, Walker stared at the blinking light on the map. Someone out there needed the kind of help only war giants could provide. After 3 centuries of peaceful slumber, they were weapons being drawn once more. Walker only hoped humanity remembered what they had created and why they had locked it away. The revival ship cut through space like a dark arrow. Built to transport the war giants, its hull was reinforced to handle their massive weight and equipped with weapons systems that had been considered cutting-edge 3 centuries ago. Captain Walker stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak by as they traveled at speeds that would have seemed impossible in his time. "Ship systems report we are 6 hours from the distress signal coordinates," Commander Reeves announced, her voice carrying easily across the command deck. "Long-range scans show significant battle damage to orbital structures." Walker nodded. The ship's AI had updated their knowledge banks during revival, but the information was limited to basic historical events and technological advancements. They had learned that humanity had spread much further than before, establishing dozens of colony worlds and making contact with 3 non-human species. Peace had largely prevailed in the centuries they slept. "Any response to our identification signal?" Walker asked. "None," Reeves replied. "Either their communication systems are damaged or no one is left to answer," Walker finished grimly. Major Reed approached, his heavy footsteps causing slight vibrations in the deck plates. Even among the war giants, Reed was massive, specializing in heavy weapons and engineering. "The armory is fully functional," Reed reported. "Our weapons are primitive by current standards, but they still work. I've been studying the technical updates. Modern defense systems use energy shielding that our projectile weapons might actually bypass." Walker considered this. "So we're obsolete, but potentially effective because of it." "Precisely," Reed said with a rare smile. "Sometimes old problems need old solutions." Lieutenant Maxwell joined them at the command console, her enhanced eyes scanning the tactical displays. Though the smallest of the war giants at just under 8 feet tall, her strategic mind made her one of the most valuable. "Captain, I've been analyzing what little information we have," she said. "The pattern of attacks doesn't match any known military strategy. These aren't soldiers. They're hunters." The ship suddenly dropped out of faster-than-light travel, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. The view screen showed the reason. A massive debris field surrounding a small planet. What must have once been a defensive station was now shattered metal spinning in orbit. "Incoming transmission," Reeves called out. "It's weak, but it's coming from the surface." A crackling voice filled the bridge. "Anyone receiving? Under attack." They came without warning. Please help. Walker straightened to his full height. Prepare landing craft. Full combat team. Within 30 minutes, the war giants had loaded into 2 dropships. Each giant wore powered armor that enhanced their already formidable strength, making them look more like walking tanks than people. As the dropships entered the atmosphere, they could see fires burning across the colony's main settlement. Something large and dark moved through the streets below. Weapons hot, Walker ordered. Remember your training. The dropships landed in what had once been a town square. The giants deployed with precision that belied their size, moving into defensive positions around the ships. The colony buildings, designed for normal humans, seemed like dollhouses compared to the war giants. A group of terrified colonists emerged from a partially collapsed structure. They froze at the sight of the giants, their faces showing as much fear as relief. An older man stepped forward cautiously. Who? What are you? Captain James Walker, War Giant Battalion 6 Alpha, Walker replied, his enhanced voice resonating across the square. We received your distress signal. The man's eyes widened. War giants, but those are just old stories. Legends from the last war. Before Walker could respond, Sergeant Foster's voice cut through their comms. Contact. East Perimeter. They're not like anything in our files. Walker turned to see dark shapes moving with terrifying speed toward their position. They weren't human, weren't like any alien species in their updated knowledge banks. They'd moved like predators, and their bodies seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Defensive positions, Walker commanded, raising his weapon. Protect the civilians. After 300 years of sleep, the war giants had awakened to a nightmare. The dark shapes moved with unnatural speed, leaping between buildings as they closed in on the war giants' position. In the fading light, Walker could see them clearly now, roughly humanoid, but with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to absorb all light that touched it. Their heads were oddly shaped, with no visible eyes but rows of sensing organs along what might be called a face. Form a perimeter, Walker ordered. Reed, heavy weapons authorized. Major Reed's massive weapon roared to life, sending concentrated bursts of metal projectiles toward the approaching creatures. The first volley struck one directly, tearing through its body. Instead of blood, a dark mist emerged from the wounds before the creature collapsed. They can die, Reed called out. That's something. The creatures, at least 24 of them, seemed to hesitate, as if surprised by the effectiveness of the attack. Then they changed tactics, splitting into smaller groups and attacking from multiple directions. Lieutenant Maxwell analyzed their movement patterns instantly. They're adapting. Watch the flanks. A creature leaped directly toward Commander Reeves, who met it with a swift strike from her powered gauntlet. The impact shattered the being's torso, sending it flying backward into a building wall. The structure partially collapsed from the force. More creatures poured in from side streets. Sergeant Foster picked off 3 with precise shots from his position, but for each one that fell, 2 more appeared. Captain, the colony leader shouted from behind them. Get your people inside that structure. He pointed to a reinforced building with heavy doors. It's our emergency shelter. Walker made a quick tactical decision. Fall back in sequence. Cover the civilians. The war giants moved with practiced precision, creating a moving wall of armor and firepower that shepherded the terrified colonists toward the shelter. Walker noticed how the smaller humans looked at them, with awe and fear in equal measure. Once inside, Major Reed and 2 other giants secured the entrance while Walker turned to the colony leader. We need information, Walker said, keeping his voice measured despite its natural resonance. What are those things? The old man slumped against a wall. We call them Void Reavers. They appeared 6 months ago in the outer systems. No one knows where they came from. He gestured to the frightened colonists. We're just farmers and miners. We had basic defenses, but nothing that could stop them. A younger woman stepped forward. I worked in communications before the attack. They've hit at least 15 colonies that we know of. They take people, living people. Walker exchanged glances with Commander Reeves. For what purpose? We don't know, the woman replied, eyes downcast. No one taken has ever been found. Lieutenant Maxwell approached after checking the shelter's defenses. Captain, I've been analyzing their attack patterns. They're intelligent predators, not mindless beasts. They modified their approach after seeing our capabilities. Walker nodded. Can we establish communication with them? We've tried, the colony leader said. Every attempt at contact has been ignored. They just take what they want and disappear. Outside, the sounds of the creatures trying to breach the shelter grew louder. The building's reinforced walls trembled under repeated impacts. How long can this shelter hold? Walker asked. Not long against that, the man admitted. Our weapons barely slow them down. Sergeant Foster returned from his surveillance position at a narrow window. Captain, they're bringing something larger. Looks like some kind of living battering ram. Walker made his decision. We're not going to wait for them to break in. We hit them first, with everything we have. He turned to the colonists. Is there another way out of this shelter? The woman nodded. Emergency tunnels, but they lead to the forest edge. We'd be exposed. Not if we create a diversion, Walker said. He looked at his team. 12 war giants, created for a war long past, now facing an enemy no one understood. Reed, Foster, Reeves, you're with me. We're going to introduce ourselves properly to these Void Reavers. Walker activated his armor's full combat systems. Status indicators flashed across his helmet display as weapon systems powered up to maximum. Let's show them why humans created war giants, he said, and why they feared us enough to put us to sleep. The shelter doors exploded outward in a shower of metal and concrete. Through the dust and debris emerged 4 war giants, weapons blazing. The Void Reavers, caught unprepared for such an aggressive counterattack, scattered momentarily. Walker charged forward, his massive frame moving with surprising speed. He grabbed the nearest Reaver and crushed it with his enhanced strength before throwing its limp form into a cluster of others. Reed, left flank. Foster, pick off stragglers. Reeves with me. Walker shouted over the din of battle. Major Reed unleashed a barrage from his heavy weapon, the antiquated projectiles ripping through the Reavers' dark bodies. Unlike modern energy weapons that the creatures seemed resistant to, the giants' old-fashioned ballistic weapons proved devastatingly effective. Commander Reeves moved in perfect coordination with Walker, the 2 giants forming a deadly team as they pushed deeper into the Reaver forces. Behind them, the remaining war giants were escorting the colonists through the emergency tunnels. The living battering ram is approaching, Foster called out, his enhanced vision spotting the massive shape lumbering toward them. It's at least twice our size. The creature that appeared from between 2 buildings resembled the smaller Reavers, but was enormously larger. Its limbs were thick as tree trunks, and its body seemed to pulse with internal energy. Fall back to position Bravo, Walker ordered, recognizing they couldn't face this new threat head-on. The 4 giants retreated strategically, drawing the massive Reaver and its smaller companions away from the escaping colonists. They reached a clearing between buildings where Lieutenant Maxwell and 3 other giants waited in ambush positions. Now, Walker commanded. Maxwell and her team emerged simultaneously, directing concentrated fire at the giant Reaver from multiple angles. The creature roared, the first sound any of them had heard from the Reavers, and charged at Maxwell. Impact imminent, she called, standing her ground. Just before collision, Walker and Reed fired grappling lines from their armor, ensnaring the creature's limbs. The momentum of the charge, combined with their enhanced strength, caused the massive Reaver to crash into the ground. Foster immediately leaped onto its back, driving a combat blade into what appeared to be a critical nerve cluster. The giant Reaver convulsed violently before going still. The smaller Reavers, seeing their champion fall, retreated into the shadows. Secure the perimeter, Walker ordered. This isn't over. By dawn, the war giants had established a defensive position around the colony's main settlement. The surviving colonists, nearly 200 people, gathered in the central square, watching as these legends from humanity's past erected fortifications with materials that would have taken normal humans days to move. The colony leader approached Walker as he supervised the defense preparations. "You saved us," he said simply. "But they'll be back. They always come back stronger." Walker nodded. "Then we'll be ready. Your people, how many can fight?" "Fight? We're farmers, not soldiers," the man protested. "Everyone can learn," Walker said. "We were created to win wars, but also to train others." He gestured to where Commander Reeves was already showing some younger colonists how to set up early warning systems. Size isn't everything in battle. Strategy matters more. Over the next 3 days, the war giants transformed the colony. Under Major Reed's direction, they modified the colonists' farming equipment into makeshift weapons. Lieutenant Maxwell established a network of lookout posts, while Sergeant Foster taught basic combat maneuvers to volunteers. Walker stood on a hilltop overlooking the settlement as the sun set on the 3rd day. Commander Reeves joined him, her armored form silhouetted against the darkening sky. 3 more colonies have reported Reaver attacks," she said. "Word of us is spreading. They're calling for help." "And the Earth government?" Walker asked. "Still debating what to do about us," Reeves replied. "Some want us deactivated immediately. Others see us as their only option against the Reavers." Walker watched as colonists and giants worked side by side below. "We weren't made to sit idle while people die." "No," Reeves agreed. "We were made for this moment." In the distance, their sensors detected movement. The Reavers were returning, and in greater numbers. But this time, they wouldn't find helpless prey. They would find war giants standing ready, doing what they were created to do, protecting humanity, no matter the cost. The night sky lit up with explosions as the Void Reavers launched their 3rd attack in a week. This time, they came with something new: floating orbs that emitted pulses of energy capable of disabling electronic systems. "EMP devices," Major Reed shouted across the defensive line. "Switch to manual systems." The war giants smoothly transitioned to their backup mechanical weapon functions, barely slowing their defense. The colonists, now organized into functional fighting units, followed their giants' lead, using the physical weapons they had trained with. Captain Walker watched from his command position as the battle unfolded. The Reavers were adapting, learning from each defeat, but so were the defenders. What had begun as a desperate last stand had become a war of attrition, one the giants were winning, if barely. Lieutenant Maxwell approached, her armor bearing fresh damage from the front line. "Captain, we've captured something you need to see." In a reinforced containment cell, a Void Reaver lay restrained but still alive. Unlike others they had encountered, this one bore markings that suggested leadership status. Its dark body pulsed weakly as it tried to break free. "We disabled it without killing it," Maxwell explained. "I believe we can establish communication." Walker studied the creature. "How?" "They've never responded to any attempt." "Because we've been trying to communicate as humans would," Maxwell said. "I've been analyzing their movements, their attack patterns. They communicate through ultraviolet light patterns across their skin." She activated a device she and Reed had constructed. It projected ultraviolet light in specific sequences onto the Reaver. The creature immediately stopped struggling. After several attempts, the Reaver began responding with its own patterns, which Maxwell's device translated into basic concepts. "It's working," she said, her enhanced mind processing the information. "It's saying, they hunt because they must. They're running from something worse." Walker leaned closer to the containment field. "Ask what they're running from." The light patterns flickered rapidly. The Reaver's response made Maxwell step back in surprise. "It says, the Devourers of Stars. Something is destroying entire solar systems at the rim of the galaxy. The Reavers are refuges, harvesting biological material to evolve themselves to survive. Walker processed this information quickly. Ask where their main fleet is located. More light patterns. The Reaver hesitated, then responded. A star system about 12 light years from here, Maxwell translated. They have a staging world where they're gathering their harvests. Before they could learn more, alarms blared throughout the compound. Commander Reeves' voice came through the communication system. Captain, we've got incoming. Not Reavers, human ships. Walker and Maxwell rushed to the colony's landing area just as 3 sleek military vessels touched down. The ships bore the emblem of the United Earth Forces, the modern descendant of the military that had created the war giants centuries ago. From the lead ship emerged a woman in an admiral's uniform, flanked by heavily armed soldiers. Their weapons were trained on the approaching giants. "I am Admiral Chen of the United Earth Forces," she announced. "By authority of the Interstellar Council, I am here to assess the situation." Walker stepped forward, towering over the admiral, but keeping his posture non-threatening. "Captain James Walker, War Giant Battalion 6 Alpha. We responded to a distress call." The admiral's eyes widened slightly as she looked up at him. "So the reports are true. The war giants have awakened and saved our lives," the colony leader said, stepping forward to stand beside Walker. "Without them, we would all be gone, just like the other colonies." Admiral Chen studied the battlefield around them, the fortifications, the organized defense, the collaboration between giants and colonists. "We've been losing colonies for months with no explanation. Our weapons have proven ineffective." Walker nodded toward the containment facility. "We've captured one alive. We know what they are, where they come from, and why they're attacking. More importantly, we know where their main fleet is gathering." The admiral's expression changed from suspicion to cautious interest. "You've accomplished more in a week than our forces have in months." "We were made for this," Walker said simply. Admiral Chen made a decision. "The Council is divided about your reactivation. Some fear what you represent from our past." She surveyed the saved colony once more. "But we need solutions now. Captain Walker, I want to hear your plan." Walker looked at his team. The war giants standing tall among the humans they were created to protect. "It's time we take the fight to them." The command deck of the UEF flagship Resolute buzzed with activity as humans and war giants worked side by side. Admiral Chen had provided 3 battleships to support the mission, but everyone knew the true strike force would be the giants themselves. "Final approach to the Reaver staging world," announced the ship's navigator. "Entering the outer orbit in 5 minutes." Captain Walker stood before a holographic display showing their target, a rocky planet orbiting a red dwarf star. Scans revealed massive structures on the surface and hundreds of Reaver vessels in orbit. "Their numbers are greater than we anticipated," Commander Reeves observed. "But their pattern remains the same," Lieutenant Maxwell countered. "They still prioritize biological collection over defensive positioning. Their weakness is their single-mindedness." Walker nodded. "The plan stands. Admiral, are your forces ready?" Admiral Chen, who barely reached Walker's elbow, straightened her uniform. "My ships will engage their orbital vessels, creating a diversion for your insertion." She hesitated before adding, "The Council has authorized this mission with one condition. If you can't neutralize the threat, you're to gather intelligence and withdraw." "With respect, Admiral," Walker said, "half measures won't stop the Reavers." "Those are my orders, Captain." The war giants exchanged glances. They had been created to win at any cost, a mindset from a different era of human history. Major Reed approached with final weapons checks. "Our dropships are ready. Enhanced armor for all team members, and I've modified our weapons based on what we've learned about Reaver physiology." "Sergeant Foster," Walker called. Foster stepped forward, his armor bearing special stealth modifications. "Recon team is prepared. We'll locate the central command structure before the main assault begins." The ship shuddered slightly as it engaged its stealth systems. On the view screen, the Reaver world grew larger. 2 minutes to drop zone, announced the ship's eye. Walker addressed his team one final time. We were created for a war that ended centuries ago. Today, we fight for a future we never expected to see. Whatever happens down there, remember what we are, the last line of defense for humanity. The war giants moved to their dropships with practiced efficiency. Each craft, specially reinforced to handle their weight, could carry 4 giants. Walker took the lead ship with Reeves, Maxwell, and Reed. As the dropships launched, the UEF battleships decloaked and opened fire on the Reaver fleet. The space above the planet erupted in battle, providing cover for the giants' approach. Their descent was rough but controlled. Foster's recon team dropped first, landing in a mountainous region 5 kilometers from the main Reaver complex. Walker's team and the remaining giants landed directly at the perimeter of the massive structure. Initial resistance is light, Reeves reported as they secured the landing zone. They weren't expecting an attack here. Walker activated his tactical display. Foster, report. In position, Captain. Foster's voice came through clearly. You need to see this. Sending visual feed now. The image that appeared in Walker's helmet showed an enormous chamber within the mountain. Inside was a structure unlike anything they had seen before, a towering crystalline object that pulsed with energy, surrounded by hundreds of Reavers in some sort of trance state. That's not Reaver technology, Maxwell said immediately. The architecture is completely different. Can you reach it? Walker asked. Affirmative, Foster replied, but it's heavily guarded by their largest specimens. Walker made his decision. Main assault team will create a diversion. Foster, your team will infiltrate and gather data on that object. It may be the key to understanding what we're really fighting. The war giants moved into position, their massive forms advancing with purpose toward the main entrance of the complex. As they approached, alarms sounded throughout the structure, and Reavers began pouring out to meet them. Weapons free, Walker commanded. The giants opened fire, their specialized weapons tearing through the first wave of defenders. Walker led the charge, his enhanced body crashing through barriers designed to stop normal humans. As the battle raged, Foster's team slipped deeper into the complex, working their way toward the mysterious crystal. Over the communication channel, Walker could hear Foster's breathing grow more labored. Captain, we've reached the chamber, Foster reported. The crystal. It's affecting the Reavers somehow, changing them. And there's something else. It's not just technology. It's alive. Before Foster could say more, a massive explosion rocked the complex. The communication channel filled with static. Foster, Walker called. Report. There was no answer. The ground trembled beneath Walker's feet as another explosion rocked the Reaver complex. Debris rained down from the ceiling as the war giants fought their way deeper into the structure. Foster's team is not responding, Commander Reeves reported, her voice tight with concern. Last known position was 50 meters ahead, near the crystal chamber. Walker smashed through a final barrier, his enhanced muscles barely feeling the strain. The scene that greeted them was chaos. The massive chamber housing the crystal was partially collapsed, and dozens of Reavers lay motionless on the ground. At the center, the crystal pulsed with erratic energy, sending out waves of ultraviolet light. There, Lieutenant Maxwell pointed to a pile of rubble where a giant's arm protruded. The team rushed forward, quickly clearing the debris to reveal Sergeant Foster. His armor was severely damaged, and dark fluid, Reaver blood, covered much of his body. The crystal, Foster gasped as Walker helped him sit up. It's not a weapon. It's a transmitter. The Reavers weren't always like this. Major Reed approached the crystal cautiously, his scanners analyzing its structure. It's emitting a signal that matches the brain patterns we observed in captured Reavers, some kind of control mechanism. Walker looked around the chamber. The remaining members of Foster's team were securing the area, but something had changed. The Reavers still standing weren't attacking. They stood motionless, as if confused. The explosion must have damaged the crystal's output, Maxwell theorized. It's losing control over them. Foster struggled to his feet. Captain, when we reached the crystal, we found data records. The Reavers were peaceful once. They encountered this artifact while fleeing from something called the Devourers. It changed them, transformed them into harvesting machines. Walker studied the pulsing crystal. A decision weighed heavily on him. They had been sent to eliminate the Reaver threat, but if what Foster said was true, the real enemy was this alien technology. Reed, can you disable it without destroying it? Walker asked. I believe so, Reed replied. But we don't know what will happen to the Reavers if we do. An urgent communication came through from Admiral Chen aboard the Resolute. Captain Walker, our sensors detect a power surge in your location. The Council is demanding an immediate report. Are you proceeding with the elimination of the Reaver forces? Walker looked at his team, then at the confused Reavers around them. For centuries, the war giants had been weapons, created to destroy without question. Now they faced a choice that would define their new purpose. Admiral, Walker responded, we've discovered the source of the Reaver behavior. It's an alien technology controlling them against their will. We believe we can neutralize the threat without further bloodshed. A long pause followed. Finally, Chen's voice returned. The Council has authorized you to proceed with your assessment, Captain. Do what you must. Reed, Maxwell, disable the crystal. Reeves, secure our position. Foster, rest and monitor the Reavers for any changes in behavior. As Reed and Maxwell worked on the crystal, its pulsing slowed. The ultraviolet emissions gradually shifted in pattern and intensity. Throughout the complex, the sounds of fighting diminished as more and more Reavers stopped attacking. Finally, the crystal gave one last pulse before settling into a steady, gentle glow. Around them, the Reavers began to move differently, less predatory, more deliberate. Some began making light patterns across their skin that Maxwell recognized as communication. They're asking what happened to them, she translated. They remember being something else. 3 days later, Captain Walker stood on the bridge of the Resolute alongside Admiral Chen as they approached Earth. The mission had transformed from a military strike into a first contact situation. Many Reavers, now freed from the crystal's influence, had begun reverting to their original nature. The Council is divided on what to do with you and your team, Chen admitted. Some still fear what you represent. Walker nodded. We were made for war. It's a valid concern. Yet you chose understanding over destruction when it mattered most, Chen countered. That says something important about who you've become. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Walker considered their future. The war giants no longer belonged to the past they'd awakened from, nor fully to the present they'd saved. They existed in between, powerful enough to defend humanity, wise enough to know the responsibility that came with that power. The Council has a proposal, Chen said. They want to establish a new outpost on the edge of known space, a first line of defense against whatever drove the Reavers to flee. They need guardians who can stand against threats beyond our understanding. Walker looked at his team gathered on the bridge. Giants among humans, weapons who had chosen to protect rather than destroy. Tell the Council we accept, Walker said. Not as weapons to be used, but as guardians who choose to serve. As the morning sun rose over Earth, it illuminated the war giants' faces, ancient defenders awakened by a desperate call, now finding a new purpose in a world that had moved on without them. Not monsters of war, but guardians of peace, standing watch at the edge of darkness so others could live in the light.